think, Nick, I'm actually going to have you stop sharing just for the first couple of minutes, and then I'll have you turn it on. Perfect. All right, I think we're almost up on Facebook, and then we can get started. All right, thank you everybody for joining us today. We have a handful of folks who have been working really hard on a challenge that none of us anticipated this year, which is trying to help parents who have kiddos who would normally be in school, who are now learning remotely, and they are trying to juggle that with having their employment that they have to manage as well. So we're going to talk about some of the childcare solutions that have been identified for the fall, mostly for school age kids, but we do have some information for younger kiddos as well. We have a lot of really great folks who've joined us as panelists who are going to give you a lot of good information. Just letting you guys know how this goes. We have folks signed on to the Zoom account as attendees. We're going to have time at the end for questions. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go along, and we'll circle back around to those at the end. If you are watching us on Facebook Live, welcome. If you have questions, you can type those in the comments, and we have a staff person who's monitoring both, so we can make sure that those get to the presenters as well. We are filming this, and we'll send the link out and have it posted on our website later today. And if you guys have any questions that don't get answered, please feel free to send those our way at the chamber, and we can make sure to reach out and get some of those questions answered for you. To get started, my name is Brittany Quick-Warner. I'm the president and CEO at the Eugene Chamber of Commerce. And as we're having conversations with employers, and just trying to find out what are some of the barriers to success for them this fall and some of the challenges that they're facing, one of the most common answers that I got was just trying to figure out how to navigate their staff having a lot more responsibilities at home with their kids remotely learning. And so we thought that as the chamber, this was something that was important enough to our local economy, that this really can have a huge impact on our local economy, that we wanted to dig into it and see what we could do to help. So we have brought together a handful of panelists who are going to talk about some of the programs that they're offering and some of the statewide and federal programs that are out there as well. So I think I'm tossing it to Nick first, but I think before we get onto the presentation, I might just have each of you introduce yourself so we know who's on the call. Holly, you're in my top left box, so I'm going to let you go first.
My name is Holly, and I'm the Youth Development VP of Operations at the Eugene Family YMCA.
Great. Erin?
I'm Erin Owen. I'm the Executive Director of the Slocum Research and Education Foundation at Slocum Orthopedics. I'm here because we have worked with the Champions Program and First Baptist Church to create a site that has some capacity for some more kids to receive childcare.
Awesome. Thank you. Nick?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Noble. I'm the Partnership Manager for Champions. My role is helping to set up programs such as the Champions at First Baptist site and assisting communities in helping with childcare needs.
Wonderful. Lisa?
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Rice. I'm with Champions. I'm a quality advisor, which means I support the field in implementing our quality standards and continuing our continuous improvement approach, and work closely with our education team, as you'll hear soon.
Awesome. Bess?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bess Jamie. I'm the Director of Education at United Way. I oversee the work of the Lane Early Learning Alliance, which is one of 16 state-funded early learning hubs. And United Way is working with community partners to stand up a child care fund to help support the school-age child care issues in our community.
Wonderful. Josh?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Josh Hamilton. I'm an area manager for Champions. My role really is supporting the operational functions as well as just teacher and family support for our programming.
Great. And Frank?
Frank Bonser, lead operations pastor for First Baptist Church. I got engaged in this through really Erin and us having a heart for the community here. We have one of the largest regional camps, Camp Harlow, within our own community here that we have thousands and thousands of kids come through every year. So we have a high level of commitment to kids and families within our own community here and can serve them in a lot of different ways. So this is just a unique way for us to use our building to best serve, I think, our community. So
that's wonderful. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna, before I toss it to Nick, I want to make sure to acknowledge the folks here. I'll make sure I'm like on a green screen. These are the folks who have stepped up to support the chamber and the work that we've been doing this year. Our annual investors who have gone above and beyond just their membership investment to really double down on the work that we're trying to get done here in the local community. So a big shout out to those sponsors. They have made it possible for us to have these free webinars and to be offering these throughout the year. In a year like this, when I know a lot of companies and individuals are going through incredibly difficult financial times, it means as much and a little bit more that they are willing to step up and really invest in this work. So a big shout out to those sponsors. I appreciate it. All right, I'm going to toss it to Nick. We have a presentation that will kind of go around talking a little bit about the work that's going on and how you guys can plug in. And like I said, we'll open it to questions after that.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
New challenge of the day is how to present your screen in a PowerPoint and unmute yourself. So.
All right, we'll try this again. Whoever had that on their Zoom bingo, you just got that box.
That's great. Well, fantastic. Thank you everybody for joining us today. It truly is a community need and a community challenge to solve. It's unprecedented. You know, for the past 100 years, school-age children have had a safe, nurturing educational environment in schools. And so this year has really put that entire system on its head. And so I appreciate the community partners from Eugene that have stepped up to help solve this problem. And I'm excited to share a little bit about what the collaboration has resulted in terms of supports for families. We're going to start off today by talking about health and safety, because I think that is really the primary priority for childcare, is making sure that we can have a safe and healthy environment for those children. Josh Hamilton, our area manager, is going to lead this portion of the conversation, along with Holly from the YMCA. We have many health and safety standards that are in parallel with each other. At the end, Holly will share anything that is specific and unique to the YMCA. Josh, if you want to go ahead and kick us off on health and safety.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks everyone for being here and for giving us the chance to chat a little bit about how we are bringing things to life right now. I think, you know, contextually, the sort of, you know, place to start with, I think, was this is, you know, I go back to March and when we opened our programming back up for the first time. And it was really, you know, is this the right thing to do? Can we do this? Is it safe? Is it right for the community? There were those questions that we needed to ask ourselves because there were so many unknowns. And so, you know, looking ahead 6 months, which may or may not be actually 6 years, I'm not sure. You know, there's been so much that we've learned and so much we've been able to achieve. But I think at the core of what we've been doing is just that continual question of how do we make sure that that our program is a safe place for not only the children that are there, but also for our teachers and our staff that are working in them, and just, you know, for the community as a whole, that it's the responsible thing to do. And we do know that folks need to work, and we know that there is a demand for childcare, but only if we can do it in a way that's responsible for the community. And so I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve around that. And, you know, again, a lot of the work that we've done is not so much led by our minds, which are necessarily focused on childcare, but we've actually partnered with pediatricians led by Dr. Ray Fabius, who was someone that Childcare and Champions partnered with early on to understand what are some of the safety protocols and practices that we can put in place to make sure that this is the right place and space for us to be. And so I'd like to share just a little bit about that, and certainly any questions that come up throughout or later on we can answer as well. This is just kind of a high-level overview of what some of the things we're doing to really work with families on keeping our site safe. And so I thought this would be a good slide to share because it's a 360 commitment to ensuring that that we have a safe environment. So we're asking, of course, families at home to identify is it the right time to be bringing your child to the program? Is there an illness in the household, or have you made contact? And there's that social responsibility that kind of lies within all of us right now in the community. And so we're certainly asking families to do that same thing. When we're looking at drop-off, we've made some modifications. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is being an inclusive and immersive environment for the entire family. And we've always felt that way. However, out of health and safety, doing things such as having our pickup and drop-off point outside of the actual program space to minimize contact. Of course, we're asking everyone to wear a face covering, and that is something that from state of Oregon is a requirement as well, but something that we've certainly been aligned with from early on. If we can be in a position where we're minimizing the person who's actually dropping off, so if we can have fewer folks coming to the program, that's going to just make sure that we're just keeping that contact at a minimum and keeping the environment safe. When we're on site, sanitation has been a huge part of our success, and just making sure that the environment is safe from that perspective. And I'll talk about pods in a second, but having stable groups to ensure that if there is an illness that occurs, that it is staying as much as possible contained. And then within that, socially distanced groups. And when we're working with children, there's an element of that we are continuing to reinforce and work with, but understanding that they're kids and this is an environment for children is really important. So all of the, I would say reinforcement around that is really positive, and having honest conversations with the kids about what they're feeling and what they're experiencing, because this is, as an adult, this is hard to process, right? And we have all the information, we have all the things that are out there, but just really making sure that as we enforce, if you will use those words, these practices and policies, that we also make it a positive experience for our kids. And in the pods piece here, you've maybe heard, obviously everyone's heard probably stable groups at this point, but the word pod is the idea of a classroom environment being a stable group, and ensuring that pod continues to be stable throughout the week, that within that pod, that if there is material sharing, that it's contained within that space. And we've also done some things you maybe saw on that last slide, like minimizing any type of soft materials or things that are challenging to clean. But at the end of the day, we understand that a group of 10 kids is going to be, there will be crossover in some form of contact. And so having a pod environment is really important to keeping everyone contained and safe. And then, some of the other things that I think are important to identify is, we understand that at the end of the day, no matter what we do, this is a virus that is out there in the community and sort of living among us. And so having a really clear response plan is important. And so you can kind of see here just a little snapshot of a response guide that we are able to operate within. And I would say one of the nice things is no situation, this is not a situation where we've got just A and B equals C all the time. There's a lot of different scenarios to consider. And so we actually have a health and safety team that we can work with to really help navigate some of these things. But in the event that we have I guess I'll call it straightforward situation that occurs, we do have some guidelines that we can work through to ensure that we continue to make it a safe environment for the children and families. And what that might look like is who to contact, what cleaning is required, what type of exclusion would be needed from a family who maybe does come in contact with COVID-19. And so some of those are practices that we have put in place, and we'll continue to evaluate and make sure that we're holding things to the safest standard possible. So if there are any questions on health and safety, again, please feel free to throw those in the box. And then I believe, and I apologize, is it Holly, correct? Maybe had some information to share around this as well, but thanks again for giving us a chance to chat a little bit about our health and safety.
Yeah, I would just add that, and I'm going to make an assumption that Champions is the same, that family engagement is at the very top of everything we do. And so communicating all of this information to families and having that open line of communication is something we both pride ourselves on, so that families are in the know when they step into a program, that this is going to be the expectation that we lead our programs with. So, and I appreciate those slides. It's very straightforward and helpful for families to understand exactly what is taking place in all of the childcare environments that exist right now. So nice job, Josh.
Fantastic. So in addition to the physical health and safety of our children, I think there's also that emotional component. There has been quite a bit that has happened over the past 6 months, that children might be coming into our programs with additional trauma, with additional stresses. And so one of the things that Champions has done is has embedded some additional social emotional learning supports into our typical activities, in addition to partnering with school districts to support distance learning. And I mentioned Champions, but YMCA also. And so I have my teammate Lisa, who introduced herself earlier, that is going to speak to our new unit that we have titled Rebuilding Our Learning Community, that encompasses those two pieces.
Looks like you're on mute, Lisa.
Somebody has two space on their bingo card.
I have my cursor over it to unmute me. I said, thank you, Nick. When our company realized pretty quickly, things closed down, kids were home, their world was upended, everyone's world was upended. But really wanted to start thinking ahead as to, we don't know where things are going or how things are going to change, but what we do know is we can build resiliency in kids. We're all going to need, even our teachers, all of us need resiliency to get through challenges and be stronger for it. So as we looked at how we would welcome children back into our classrooms, the way we teach and care for students had to be different. So we really focused on that resiliency and created a re-entry curriculum that focuses on how we can help build kids' resiliency. So we call it Rebuilding Our Learning Curriculum, and the foundations are those key components to building resiliency: strong relationships. The most important factor in developing resiliency is a child having at least one stable, nurturing adult relationship in their life. For some students, school or programs like ours are the place where they find that vital relationship, and that the connections that we make with students can have a lifelong impact. Can you go back? I was gonna talk a little bit self-determination, right? Children need to feel a sense of agency and control in their lives so that they can better visualize a positive future and adopt a growth mindset. And then, as Josh mentioned, right, social emotional learning is key to that. Some of us, we've developed skills over a lifetime to help us have relationships and manage our emotions, and kids are still learning those. So how can we help? By helping kids develop social emotional learning skills, it builds their resiliency. Underpinning our entire curriculum and our practices are around trauma-informed best practices and anti-bias education. What these do, and they're infused throughout, it's not something separate, it's just part of our philosophy, that we have to recognize the impact of trauma and create a learning environment that facilitates physical, social, and emotional safety for students. Our anti-bias principles encourage students to think about what's best for everyone instead of just for themselves, help others when they see that they are being treated unfairly, include others in activities, games, and playtime. We don't want kids learning how to ignore and exclude others. And then putting themselves in someone else's shoes and think about how they would want to be treated. So Rebuilding Our Learning Community curriculum consists of 3 sections, and the first one is positive classroom culture. Having a warm and welcoming, inclusive relationship or program environment is a core component of our quality standards. So this is nothing new, but we knew we had to go the extra mile, welcoming children back into our program, school, and community, and really focus on building those supports. So it starts with bringing kids together in intentional ways to build community and to build relationships with each other and to get used to the new abnormal. And so we do that through class meetings, which you'll see a list of them on the left side of the screen. And Get Into the Groove is an opportunity, a morning meeting to start the day off and set the tone for the day. And also we're using this time, this is our reentry curriculum, to get the kids talking about all the changes, right? How do we get the kids' input, as Josh was mentioning, to determine how are we going to do social distancing together? And so when the kids can contribute and problem solve around it, then they are more likely to own it and follow their own advice. And then on the right side of the screen is additional activities that are designed to help kids get to know one another. Virtual adventures are super fun ways they can learn about different subjects. And we've also built in mindfulness activities to help them just take a break. Part 2 of our curriculum is specifically about cultivating resiliency through a project-based approach. And it is absolutely phenomenal, I have to say. I work with the education department and I train our teachers on curriculum and how to use it, and kids to choose their own project, to have a voice in determining solutions for their projects, gives them that agency and control. And all of the themes for our projects are tied to 5 key social emotional learning skill sets that develop resiliency, which would be the next slide. Right, so problem solving, optimism, empathy, growth mindset, and ingenuity. And our first unit that came out was around building optimism. And one of the projects that they can choose, they can also choose their own, is to interview friends and family on what makes them feel optimistic and put together either a video documentary or a collage or however they want to create it. And really they own that and they learn in the process about optimism and about themselves, and are also using their critical thinking skills and relationship skills in achieving their project goal. And our third section is about partnering with schools to support distance learning, right? It's a totally new world in the realm of education. And we developed tools for success and resources to support our teachers in implementing our program, communicating with school officials, families, and of course the children. So what's covered for our teachers and for our families, we picked these 5 core components, right? We have to partner with families. We have, when parents register or families register for our distance learning programs, we ask for some information up front, right? What platform, what's your teacher's name? What are the platform are they using? Help us, provide us with a schedule so that we can make sure that kids are ready and set to start their day right. Also, we ask them, what did you learn from the spring about how your child learns online? And what other supports might they need? And then we cover planning ahead. We can't go into this blindly because it requires thinking ahead, working with kids to plan their week. We have daily and weekly planners that kids can choose from to track their classes, to track their assignments, and also allow our teachers to support them. The other part is, setting up the learning environment. We still have to be socially distanced. We know we need charging stations because kids' laptops might run out of battery. and still creating that warm and welcoming environment that allows them to explore things based on their interests. In terms of supporting student learning, our guide, this guide that I'm referencing right now, provides a plethora of resources on how kids might learn differently and what ways we can adapt to support their needs, whether they're a wiggler and can't, you know, what kindergartner or first grader can sit in front of a computer for so long? So how can we make accommodations to help them learn in an inclusive environment? And then, of course, creating community by partnering with families and schools. I think we talked about this on the last slide. Maybe we have customized schedules and breaks fit to need because we know everybody might be on a slightly different schedule depending on their classroom. Go to the next one, Nick. In terms of motivation and support, right, making sure they have a planner. We have scheduled breaks. We've created resources about ideas for brain breaks. I think physical activity is super important. Kids have been home and need to really be doing some more movement. And then providing our teachers with ways that they can accommodate different learning styles through maybe modified books or text to speech. Physical breaks, what kind of signals can we teach children to use when they need help? And then I always love to come back to our service values. Our company surveyed our families and our teachers, and we developed these service values that guide the work that we do every day. And responding to the needs and interests of every child is forefront when it comes to supporting distance learning and bringing children back into our programs.
Fantastic. Lisa, thank you for sharing. Holly, I know that there's a lot of crossover from what you guys are doing to support distance learning at the YMCA. Would you like to share anything that's unique to your programs?
I would add that everything you just said, and we're 3 days into it, is exactly what I is doing, and I'm sure other programs are doing the same thing. The main focus, I think, being again is that partnership with the families and communication with them, and ensuring that we have the logins and the schedules, and that our areas are set up for that, you know, that amazing learning environment. The Y has a strong focus on physical activity, specifically for this school year, just because we've seen what happened beginning in March when we were all shut down. And so we are trying to get those kids as active and engaged as possibly we can do. But yeah, we'd mirror just about everything that you all just put in there too. So thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about what this specifically means for the Champion site at First Baptist Eugene, and then Holly will share a little bit about their specific locations. So at the onset of this conversation, I believe it started back in August, as Erin from Slocum mentioned, originally with her organization, but quickly branched out to others in the community, was that there was this panic really amongst staff members, amongst families, amongst businesses, that there wasn't childcare options for their families. And it was impacting their ability to return to work, their ability to make their schedules, and their ability really to, again, have that safe, nurturing environment for their children during the school day. And so Erin brought Champions into the conversation and said, is this something that you can help with? Is there a pop-up site that could occur in collaboration with you? And I said, well, that definitely is something that we could consider. However, we don't have a space. We typically operate in school buildings. And as far south that we've gone in Oregon was the Salem area. We have quite the footprint in the Portland area and Salem and in other states. But we hadn't actually served the Eugene community with the Champions component. And so I reached out to a few of my partners and realized that we actually did have Childcare locations down in Eugene. We had to see if there was capacity at those locations, and there was not. Those were already running at capacity. So went back to the drawing table, and that was when we were able to connect with First Baptist of Eugene. And I don't know if you've been out there, but they have a beautiful facility that's specifically built with children in mind, like Frank mentioned earlier on in his introduction. classroom wings, fields and outdoor space, play structure, really a great accommodating place for children. So with Slocum's help and then the addition of Peace Health, we set up childcare spots specifically for their staff. We realized, though, in doing so, that we actually had capacity to go beyond Slocum and beyond Peace Health and offer care to the greater community and additional business partners. And so the details for the First Baptist site with Champions, we plan to open on October 5th, so just a little over a week away. We'll be offering care full day, Monday through Fridays from 7:30 to 5:30. We currently have capacity in our first phase to offer spots to 40 additional children. And then we have a plan to do a phase 2 where we'd have an additional 90 children that we could accommodate. We are asking that employers subsidize the space cost for childcare at the First Baptist site. The utilities, the cleaning procedures that go into COVID-19 really have significantly increased the cost of space for everybody. So we're asking that employers contribute $130 per child per month to accommodate those space costs. And then our family tuition is $260 per week. We are working with ERDC, so that will actually take us to Beth's portion of the conversation around what some additional financial resources are available to families. We're also working with a few organizations to see if we can potentially eliminate this space cost for employers through some grant funding. Holly, would you like to share a little bit about the YMCA locations, the partnership options, and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so we started our, I guess it's what we would call our part 3 of emergency childcare. We ran 12 weeks in the spring, and then we ran 10 weeks this summer, and now we're starting our fall adventure. And so we operate as emergency pop-ups under a certified childcare umbrella. So what we used to do was operate in elementary schools. With those being closed, we've now moved into a partnership with some area churches and a couple schools. And so we're operating programs in Garden Way, Grace Community Fellowship, and then New Hope. And then we are in Meadowview, which is in the Bethel School District. And we are in Latham, which is in Cottage Grove, which is a school that was closed down about a year ago. And so our programs, we have about 82 enrolled, and I think there's about 68 spots that are still open there. And then within the community, there is capacity for, we think, about 120 more spots to open through some of the middle schools will be opening. And through those sites will be able to also offer free meals to families who are in those. And that's not something like in our church spaces, we aren't currently able to offer free meals. So those school spaces will be able to operate free meals. We do offer financial assistance to families when if they do see that the tuition is a hardship, and those essentially entail just a conversation with one of us about what their story is and what the hardships are in their family, and then we try to create an amount that works for that family. We also are able to reach out to some of those McKinney-Vento youth and help them get into childcare, whereas they're living out of cars and it's harder to have access to technology. So we're able to reach out to some of those smaller pockets too. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, some of our partners have been the One Hope Network. They were able to help us get into the churches, and then the school districts that we've worked with, as well as the 21st Century Best program that runs through 4J. So there you go. Thanks, Nick.
Fantastic. All right. And then the United Way has also really stepped up in a substantial way to put together resources for the community that addresses childcare needs for both school-age children and younger children, 0 to 5. And then I've also worked with a few grant funds to see if we could get additional financial resources pushed out to support childcare in the community. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to Bess to share a little bit about what her organization has been able to accomplish.
Thank you. So I'm just going to focus quickly on the 0 to 5 set, since we've been talking about school age childcare, just to give the full breadth of options for families, knowing that many families have both preschool and school age kids. So the health and safety guidelines for early care and education, which is that 0 to 5 group, were most recently updated in mid-August. They are slightly different from last spring and from the K-12 schools. But they include, similar to what Josh was talking about earlier, drop off and pickup restrictions, some daily health checks for kids. And then I think what's most relevant is the group size and the stable groups for kids in different settings. And so if it's an in-home family childcare provider, those ratios are going to be different than a childcare center or a preschool that's being delivered through a school. And so it just varies. So depending on your family's particular wants and needs, you may think about different types of providers that you might access care with. So the stable group piece is that kids are assigned to a group with the same adults and can only be added or moved to a different group if it's a permanent change, just to keep those, to keep the same group of kids with the same group of adults to reduce exposure to new folks. And then for the pre-K set, masks and face coverings are not required for kids, but it's optional for children as long as they can remove them without assistance on their own. So that's just something to note for families that have that question. In terms of financial assistance for childcare and preschool, we have two state-funded preschool and early care options for families depending on income eligibility. One is Head Start and Early Head Start, and that's for families that are making between 100 to 130% of the federal poverty level. And then the other is Preschool Promise, which is 200% of the federal poverty level. And I'm happy to answer specific questions about those income thresholds, or you can visit lanekids.org for that. And then the second option is around employment-related daycare, and this is a benefit that's delivered through DHS. It's also known by its acronym of ERDC, because everything at DHS has an acronym. And right now with the COVID financial assistance, families are looking at a $0 copay. Normally there is a family contribution, and there are higher income thresholds to qualify than ever before. And these limits are currently good through the end of October. And so we're really working to help push as many families that would qualify for this benefit as possible to qualify through the DHS application procedure. And that way they can, if they qualify under those income limits, they can receive up to 12 months of childcare at zero cost, that $0 copay. So it's a huge benefit for families that qualify. And again, we're trying to get as many families as possible headed in that direction. We are at the Early Learning Alliance working on training some family resource center coordinators to help families apply and go through the application, because I know it can be daunting for folks. And so we'll be sending out more information about that, or you can look at our Lane Kids Facebook and website for information as that happens. But we're training folks this week to be able to help with applications as early as next week. And then,
hey, Bess.
Sure.
That also applies to school agers too, though, correct?
Correct.
ERDC.
Yep,
yes,
it does. It's not just for 0 to 5. Thanks for that, Holly. That's a good point. It's for any childcare for families.
Hey, Bess, can I stop you for a second there? Because I think this is super important. And I think there's a lot of folks who maybe don't realize this resource is out there. So the chart here that you have in the bottom right, I think it's a little bit confusing or misleading. I know, Erin, you were able to put together some numbers that kind of helped put this into perspective for employers. I don't know if you can touch on a little bit more. This is actually available to a decent amount of folks in our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick may jump back in and have the numbers more readily at hand. But when you're looking at this chart in the bottom corner there, the number in the group is really the number that DHS would consider as your household members, going through an algorithm of who qualifies as living in your household. And on the right-hand side is the gross income limit. As reference, a family of 4 living in the same household, that $58.99 translates to just a little over $70,000 per year. That's much higher than normally what we would see in non-COVID times. I think it's about almost double, or about 50% higher rather. And so really when you're looking at this chart, if you have families, that family of 5, I believe that's mid 80s per year. So it's really a high income threshold relative to what we normally experience. And a lot of families we hope will qualify, since the median household income in Lane County is still under $50,000 per year.
Yeah, so that gross income limit there, that's per month. Just make sure that's clarified.
That's per month.
And the ERDC group number, that means the number of people in your family. Is that right?
So the number of people in your household, and they do look at how households are defined in different ways, depending on who's living with you, who's a tax dependent, etc. So DHS will help work through that. But if you're a fairly straightforward household, where you have, a parent and 2 kids, that's pretty straightforward. Some people might be watching their niece, or, have custody of, another child, or have more income earners in the household. But DHS will help families walk through that. And I know that the Y and Childcare also have folks available to help walk through that application process. But in general, if you're kind of doing back of the envelope calculation for families, it's the number of people in the household on the left and your gross monthly income on the right.
Right. And I want to reemphasize that this is open for applications through the end of October. So there is some time sensitivity to this. And I know as an employer, this is something that I didn't know was a resource for, some of my staff. And so I wanted to make sure that employers really could see that this is something that's out there, and we'll send information out via the chamber for how you can get this information to your staff, because I think it's important that folks know that there is some additional resources in this crazy time that can help folks with that cost.
And I have had employees apply and get approved already. And they've provided me with kind of the feedback that DHS, that indeed this is very true, that they are getting 12 months of 100% free childcare, in this case through our pop-up center at First Baptist Church in partnership with Champions. But this is for any childcare provider who's licensed with the state. Families can use this. So if you have families who have already found a different source of care, they are still eligible as long as they're working with a provider who's licensed by the state.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. All excellent information. I'm glad we slowed down to work through that. Okay, finding quality care for families that don't know where to start is difficult at best, and even more challenging right now with COVID and distance learning and wildfires and displacement. And so I just want to put a call out for folks to go find your way somehow to 211. You can call them, you can text them, you can email them. I've included the hours of operation there. They really are looking across the entire Oregon state landscape for childcare slot availability, and are working around school-age childcare as well. But if you don't know where to go, 211 is the place to start. You can also, there's also an online childcare search engine that you can go to look up specific providers, or to look up a set of providers in your area. And if you just look up Find Childcare in Oregon, it will direct you to a website to do that online. So there are resources available. And I just want to put a call out too, that we have really great large programs in our community, like the Y, like Champions and First Baptist, Boys and Girls Club, Eugene Science Center, but we have a plethora of in-home family-based childcare providers that make up the bulk of our childcare workforce, and supporting that that net of providers is also super important. And a way to get to those smaller home-based care providers and centers is through 211. So I'll just advocate that folks check that out as well if you're looking for care, especially for different age children. And yeah, that was it from me. So I'll take any questions.
All right. So I want to kind of just recap and reiterate. the reason that we started this conversation is because we knew folks were going to have to get creative this year. Right now, we're lucky that at least kindergarten to third grade are able to be meeting in person. I know that Eugene 4J is still doing remote, but I know Springfield and some of the private schools aren't. If our community gets to a point where we have to go back to distance learning, I know a lot of parents are just kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do with my kids while I'm trying to continue to work full time. So that was the impetus for this conversation. We want to let folks know that there are some options out there where you can have your kids in childcare, even if they, maybe you weren't used to doing that because they were in school, and that they're going to help those kiddos get through the distance learning curriculum, that they're going to have programs in place for them to learn, that they're put together in a safe manner. And so Champions and YMCA are just two of those. We know that there's others in our community that are offering that. So we just want to make sure employers knew that there are some options out there for their staff. And I've also heard from some employers who are willing to kind of help out financially to allow their staff to do that, which is why we wanted to talk about the Champions program, because as an employer, you can provide a subsidy for your staff to actually be able to participate in this program. So again, there's other options out there. Bess, I don't know if you guys at United Way have a good kind of collection of all of those right now, or if we're kind of still putting that together.
Yeah, we are working on having sort of a page on our lanekids.org website around childcare resources. You can go there right now, and right in the top left-hand corner is childcare and distance learning resources for families. And we're continuing to build that resource page as we find out and link to things. So please check it out. It's dynamic and live, and so things will continue to get added, but we welcome folks to go there right now.
Great. So a couple of questions have popped up. One person asked on the Facebook thread, is First Baptist, is that Champions program offering scholarships for family, or is it only the ERDC funds that they have as scholarships available?
Yeah, great question. So as of right now, we are working with ERDC funds and then also identifying additional scholarship funds out in the community that could potentially be utilized to offer additional scholarships. We do anticipate having some updates on that in the near future.
Perfect. Another question is there a path for additional organizations to offer their space for these childcare purposes, churches or places that meet the standards that are out there?
I can say that the school district is about to open up. Roosevelt's going to open up 40 spots. Cal Young's got 40 spots. Madison Middle School is going to have 40 spots. So there will be within the next couple of weeks. After School Club is going to open at Madison. Treetop's going to open at Roosevelt. And so there is going to be some opening for some after school for those K through 5th all day care that will be opening up within the next 2 weeks. They just have to jump through the certification hoops.
Okay, so that where they typically were after school, they will now be full day. Is that what I understand?
Yep.
And are these spaces open for anybody to sign up for?
Yeah, they'll be
who are already in those programs.
No, anyone. They're going to be open enrollment.
Okay, perfect. All right. Other question. So Erin, I know you as a representative of Slocum, you kind of went down this path because you saw that there was a huge need for your employees. I'm curious what your experience has been as an employer offering this to folks, and is this something that they've been happy to have as an offering? I'm trying to think through employers who are out there who are like, I don't know if I need to weigh in on this, but you guys did. You stepped up and said, we want to help try and solve this problem for our staff.
Yeah, I think overwhelmingly the program has been very well received, and the staff were thrilled to have an option. Staff who qualified for employee-related daycare subsidy are, of course, over the moon because they're not paying anything. But what we're finding is some of our higher income earners maybe didn't have as much emergency funds or were furloughed for a long time and just don't have quite as much bank account resilience as they used to. So I think, no one intended or anticipated having, 4 to 9 months, wherever's coming, of childcare that they are not used to paying for. So I think that part, has been hard for anyone to think about. Anything more than 0 is more than I had planned on. But people are thrilled to have a choice and have an option, and to have known that there was something that they could take advantage of, previously having no known choices available. And certainly at the time that we stood up our pop-up, the schools were not in the position where they were saying they were allowing anybody to do any childcare in school settings, etc. So First Baptist essentially has a school, a couple floors of worth of school. And so what I think is nice about that site is that it's going to feel very much like going to school for kids, which I think in these uncertain times is such a blessing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Bess, I don't know if you or Holly can touch on, some of the other programs that are out there. I know the Boys and Girls Club has been really active in the conversation around childcare. A lot of our childcare providers who've been doing this for a while, but obviously the need is so much greater because we're talking about school-age kids who now need spaces to be as well. So that's obviously why, the demand has gone up significantly for this childcare and why this is a new challenge for our community. But Bessie, I don't know if you or Holly can touch on other groups that have been working on this too.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that right off the top of my head, just like you mentioned, Boys and Girls Club, they're trying to expand the number of kids they're being able to serve. And I think their age group is K through 8. I mentioned briefly too, the Eugene Science Center is standing up a childcare, and they're going to be running on-site half-day afternoon camps on a daily basis. And then looking at, they'll be running through September and then looking at continuing or expanding to full-day camps. So that's another Eugene area spot as well. And again, just putting a shout out there that even in-home care providers, like some of the smaller home-based care providers, are also providing school-aged care. So it's not just limited to the groups that are delivering in these larger programs, but you can still get care and in a smaller neighborhood home-based provider. So
yeah,
Holly, do you have anybody else that?
I would say Eugene Creative Care is also offering, and I'm not sure which spaces we're all in. That's the thing. Like when you lose we've lost our school space. So now we're trying to figure out where to go. But I think they're going to be in a space. And I would also reach out to Quality Care Connections for families too, to reach out directly to them, because then somebody will answer the phone and you'll be able to ask questions about what's available in the community right now. That's who we send our families to, is to them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So there's a couple other questions. Is there an age limit for childcare for this remote learning? I'm assuming for the school age kids, is there an age limit for your all's programs?
We're certified for 5 through 12. So, and a 12-year-old can be up to 7th grade. Would that be the same for you, Nick?
The same for Champions as well.
Okay, so 5 years old to 12 years old is kind of what you guys are geared towards. Okay. Another question is the ERDC funds for those who are already employed, or can folks who are unemployed and looking for work access those funds?
That's a great question, because typically it's been a benefit for employed folks that need a subsidy, and that's why it comes with that copay. The parent does pay something, but I honestly don't know. That's a good question that we would need to ask DHS, or we can. In fact, I'll just dig a little bit for just a minute while we answer other questions and see if I can come back and answer that.
Okay, great. And if we
I can share, I was just going to say there are a couple other work search subsidy programs that are available through DHS, so it would just depend on the specific program. ERDC is specifically for folks who are working, but there's other support programs that they would want to contact their local office about.
Okay, great. And I think it's a good question if there's folks who were laid off or furloughed that are expecting to go back to work, and hopefully within the next month or so, they might be looking for options. So yeah, if Bess, you can find that. If not, we'll dig a little bit and we'll get that answer out too. I can see who asked it, but for other folks who are interested.
I would also add though, Brittany, that just because they can be working at home and apply for ERDC. And I think that's sometimes families think, oh, I can't because I'm not working outside my home. Well, no, you actually can apply. So it does not hurt to apply regardless of what someone's situation is just to take that step. and see what happens.
Thank you for that clarification. That's really good. It's not just if you aren't able to be at home with your kids, like if you're working from home. I know a lot of us who are doing that. I couldn't imagine having to also, help someone through schooling. So I have a lot of respect and empathy for those folks who are dealing with that. Well, we are coming up on our time here. I want to, just say thank you again, you guys, for jumping on to talk about this. We're going to try to push the information out. So we'll be sharing more about the Champions program at First Baptist Church. And a huge thank you to Erin at Slocum for, kind of brainstorming this idea up. I know as an employer, Slocum's incredible to their staff. And so this is just one sign that they're trying to go above and beyond to really support those staff members. Huge thanks to Bess at United Way. This has been an enormous year for you all, just trying to help with community resources and then add wildfires on top of it. We can relate that there's never a problem that you're not asked to try and solve. And so I appreciate you guys trying to do that. And then of course, I'll at United Way, at YMCA, you guys have been doing amazing stuff, helping provide childcare for kids in our community for a long time. And so I appreciate you all again, stepping up to try and expand that care. I know you all had, I think, a waiting list of over 700 families who this summer were really trying to find somewhere to help put their kids in a safe place. So you guys have stepped up in a huge way. Any final comments from any of our panelists? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll have this up on our website and on Facebook Live. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send those to the chamber and we will get it out to these experts in the community and try to get your questions answered. We appreciate everybody joining us and I hope you have a good week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.